So hello again. And so in today's discussion, students chose about senior drivers. What in particular? Well, should elderly drivers return their driver's license? Right? So first of all, do you agree with this? Drivers in the 16 to 19 age group have by far the most accidents. We do not need warnings that say 60 plus should be tested, as they have far the least number of accidents and this is quite important to remember, are the safer drivers. So there's something to think about. So if we look at this point by the National Police Agency, they say that, well, in fact, since 66 to 2020, you can see there's a massive drop in the number of fatalities within 24 hours, noted by the blue mark, and also within 30 days. So that would appear to give the impression that the roads are indeed safe. Okay, however, as you probably know, there's been uproar with the elite elderly drivers, not just regular drivers, but elite elderly drivers who've caused fatal crash but not arrested, despite manslaughter. Manslaughter means killing someone by, well, not on purpose, but it happens. So in downtown Tokyo in April 2019, an 87-year-old former senior bureaucrat struck and killed a mother and a young daughter in a crosswalk or zebra crossing and injured 9 others. While the driver reportedly said the accelerator got stuck, no problems were found with the car, leading police to suspect that this person stepped on the accelerator pedal instead of the brakes. And this is most likely due to the fact of his poor judgment being of 87 years old. But it's not just in Japan. If we think about in the UK, for example, if we look at Prince Philip, unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, about 97 years old and husband to the former Queen Elizabeth II of Britain. He overturned his Land Rover in a car crash on a rural, i.e. country road, north of London. He was unhurt at that time, but 2 women in an oncoming minivan suffered scratches and a broken wrist, but are 97 years old. So we must ask this question, should we do something about it? Because it's quite obvious that they are too old. And so we should avoid it as best we can. Now, this is interesting though. Fatal crash involvement rates increased substantially though for middle-aged drivers, but decreased among older driver age groups, according to one study. However, another study says that the number of fatal traffic accidents caused by drivers aged 75 or over in Japan in 21 rose by 13 accidents from the previous year of 346. So we can see that there is evidence that conflicts each other. So which one do we believe? That is up to your judgment as such. But the good news is that there is an increase in the number of elderly people who voluntarily return their driver's license. You can see this with regards to those, especially 65 to 74 years old and 75 and over. So it is good, but should we be doing more? That's the question I have. So according to recent reports, a new system by the government's deciding in which certain people aged 75 years or over will have to take a driving test when they renew their driver's license. And this is supposed to be scheduled by next May, according to the Japan's National Police Agency. So what does this mean? Well, to reduce the number of accidents involving elderlies, the driving skills test will be conducted on senior citizens who are 75 years old and above and have committed any violation within the 3 years, such as ignoring traffic lights, speeding, or obstructing pedestrians crossing a street. But already alarm bells are ringing because they are 75 years old committing such violations. Should something be done sooner? Well, let's think about the warning signs, because for me, this is quite obvious. So, for example, if you're drifting into other lanes unintentionally, or making sudden lane changes, or ignoring or stopping the stop signs and traffic signals, or there's increased confusion while driving in traffic, and finally, braking or stopping abruptly without cause. These will show that there are concerns. Oh, there's one more I have: accelerating suddenly without reason. So these are obvious points which we can recognize. But do the elderly know this? Because this is definitely a sign, probably, of dementia. What does that mean? Well, it's a general term for the impaired ability to remember, think, or make decisions that interferes with doing everyday activities. In other words, the brain is not working as well as it used to, so it's hard to judge and do something correctly. Hence, the concern about safety of the elderly drivers and other people around them. So, well, let's think about the advantages, the pros. The first thing about why elderly should keep their license is because it makes them keep mobile and independent. So when you have a set of wheels, i.e. a car, you're free to travel anywhere. If you're planning a road trip, grocery shopping, or seeing a doctor in an emergency, this could be of great benefit to you. So that's one reason why elderly should keep their driver's license. Another is to avoid public transportation. So what do I mean by that? Well, traffic may be heavy at times, but it's nothing compared to you cross when you're taking public transportation every day. And as you can imagine, Japan, it's pretty crowded on those trains. Buses and trains can run behind schedule without warning, and weather delays can make it even a nightmare. So you have to think about also how expensive the fares are and finding a seat, especially when you've got a disability during rush hours. And then it also increases the opportunity of getting sick, especially with COVID. Do you want to take the risk of taking public transportation? Another point to remember is the cognitive health and mental well-being. What do I mean by that? Well, it keeps your brain strong and active and helps you stay alert when you drive. You can detect the most efficient way to react when faced with changing situations. Okay, scientific literature says that adult drivers who improve memory, reasoning, and processing speed have fewer automobile accidents than the control group. In other words, driving exercises your brain, and so therefore it can be considered as a good point. However, as you can imagine, there are concerns, and the obvious one is it's dangerous for elderly drivers. Obvious, but then, as I said before, the government are choosing 75 years old or older to focus their attention on. But in 2020, about 7,500 older adults were killed in traffic crashes, and almost 200,000 were treated in emergency departments for crash injuries. So this basically means each day, 20 older adults are killed and almost 540 are injured in crashes. So could this be avoided? Another point is that public transportation is safer and underused in the right times. So a modern increase in transportation use can help reduce traffic-related fatality significantly because you've got less people on the road. And then peace of mind of other family members. So what does it mean? Because driving represents independence and freedom for most older adults, the idea of limiting or giving up their driving can be a deeply personal and emotional issue. So that's why some people are reluctant. Okay, but for older people, limiting driving presents practical problems and can cause strong emotions from sadness to anger. Now, family members themselves may feel angry, frustrated, or guilty about depriving their loved ones of the freedom of driving. But despite these concerns, family members of older drivers alike prefer to keep their loved ones safe from getting hurt or hurting others. So by preventing them from driving, this becomes peace of mind. It reduces the stress of other members. Furthermore, other things to concern, well, other considerations would be this. If you look at this, you can see, do you favor or oppose requiring drivers older than 74 to take both the written driving test? Surprisingly, if we look at the 18 to 29-year-olds, they would definitely agree that older people should take the driving tests and the written test, and 30 to 44-year-olds even more so. But when we come to the 65 and plus, you can see this has dropped, and only 39% feel that older people should take these tests. So it seems like when you're getting close to that age group, you're less reluctant, or you're more reluctant to agree with taking this test, possibly because you realize you're going to fail. Another question was, should getting a driver's license be more or less difficult? For the younger age group, you can see that there is slightly more agreement about having it more difficult. Okay, but generally, most people would prefer to keep it the same. And then if you had the test, do you think you'll pass it at 74? You can see here that for those of 74, they believe they will still pass it, which is confidence, but is it too much confidence? Now, the other thing I want to talk about is injuries and the deaths. So we look at the facts. Who do you think creates more injuries, younger drivers or older drivers? Well, in fact, the younger drivers are more dangerous in the fact that they create injuries, not just to themselves, but for the passengers in the car and people walking outside on the street. So you can see that's per 100 million miles driven on the left-hand side, you can see that there are, in fact, 300 injuries and over 150 of other people outside, and I've just over 150 drivers injured and just under 100 passengers injured. That's from the younger age group. But if you see, it drastically reduces and then increases between the 70 to 80 plus mark. So that's the injury. So we can see that's quite clear. What about deaths? Who do you think causes the most deaths? Well, it is, in fact, as you can see, both the younger age group, but this time it's on the opposite side. Those 70 years and older, they create more concerns about the not just injuries, but about deaths, particularly among the drivers themselves. So that will be a clear argument about the problems about elderly driving. So just to recap, the benefits of elderly driving still would be, first, freedom to travel. They could avoid public transportation and therefore the concerns such as COVID. The moving in and out is easier, so they have a lot more they can do. It keeps the brain active, allows you to be more independent as well. Now the cons, well, the first one's pretty obvious. Yes, dangerous for the driver, but also dangerous for others, the passengers and those on the street. Also prevents using public transport, which is definitely safer. And you need to encourage more local community as well. So by that, people will move to places that are a lot safer for them. And then it's more expensive to keep a car because you've got to consider the petrol and also car maintenance. And finally, peace of mind for other family members, knowing that their elderly parents are not taking the risk. So there we go, the pros and cons of elderly driving still. So again, choose your two sides, and I want you to discuss as best you can. Okay, good luck with this. Thank you very much.